Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. I'm your host, David Carr, founder of Steward Your Business, where we really focus on helping business leaders, owners scale with clarity, alignment, getting those teams in the right place for really sustainable growth. And today I have a brand new guest I'm super excited to have here. She is amazing. You're going to really lean on this. We talk about sleep, actually. Sleep, not in a lifestyle topic, but really as a performance driver for you, for your business. And, if you haven't been paying attention in a while, here's the reality. You can have the right strategy, perhaps even the right team or the right systems. But if you are exhausted, reactive, you're running on empty, none of that performs in the way it should. And so I'm excited because Jalene Szuba has an amazing background of experience. She's going to tell you more than you ever could realize how much sleep can make a difference in how you show up, and stop pushing. And that's why I'm really excited for this conversation. Jalene is a transformational well-being coach. She's a TEDx speaker. We're going to put a link to her TEDx so you guys can check that out too. She's a behavioral change expert who really has been working with high performers for a long time to break through patterns that are holding them back. And Jalene, I'm super excited to have you here and jump into the topic today.
Thank you. I love talking about sleep.
Absolutely. Well, my first question right out of the gate, honestly, Jalene, and we'll get deeper into it, but why do you see, you've worked with so many high performers, why are they ignoring something as foundational as sleep? What are you seeing in that?
Well, we all were taught, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah.
That's how we all grew up. And now we're the science is showing us differently.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. It's a very much, and I think I would say particularly here in the United States, go. But, why is sleep so ignored until it becomes a real issue? Like you're saying, something, now we've kind of gone past empty and now we're seeing issues. But why is it ignored? Because what do you see that? Why is it being ignored?
I think we're all, so many of us in corporate America, even in our own businesses, we're hyperachievers, right? Like,
Yep.
I got to do the next thing. I got to market. I got to get the team together. I got to get the presentation together. And we're, for lack of a better word, judged on our performance and our production. And we see that in hours available to us. And then you've got a family, and then you've got to take care of yourself. And there's only so many hours in the day. And so sleep is something that gets pushed back. I was actually just on the phone or on a Zoom before this with a student at our local university who's doing a PSA on sleep and mental health. And he's like, I'm guilty of it too. Like, I just push sleep back. I need another hour to, go eat or to study. And so we've grown up in this culture where sleep can be sacrificed. We've had this mentality, and now we're learning so much more in later years when we look at dementia and Alzheimer's and how that relates to the sleep that we're getting in our 30s and our 40s and our 50s. And we're seeing that they really are connected. And so now people of our age are like, oh, wait a minute. I don't want to be like that because I can see it in my parents or my grandparents. And what can I do now? And sleep really is one of the key things you can do.
Wow, that's powerful, Jalene, because one of the things with Steward Your Business, I'm helping organizations as well and taking care of their people, but sometimes it's delayed, and I feel like it's like, well, like you said, we can put it off. But what I hear you saying is it will manifest itself at some point in whether it's Alzheimer's, diminished mental clarity, if we're not getting that. And I don't know, the numbers better than I have, but of how much hours of sleep we should be getting over the course of our life. Like, what is it? What's the percentage roughly, Jalene, of our total life span? Do you know the number? I don't know off the top of my head. A third.
It's a third.
So a third.
I can tell you.
A third, right? So
yeah,
at least a third overall.
Yeah, you think about, like, the recommendation is 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. There's 24 hours in a day. So if you're getting 8 hours, that's a third of your day sleeping. So if you live to 75, it's 25 years you're supposed to spend sleeping.
There you go.
It's incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. No, it absolutely is. And to your point is, every time, essentially what I hear you saying a little bit is, if you're not doing that and taking care of yourself, you're kind of robbing a bit of your future self away too, of like, okay, what's the quality of my life going to be like? And so it's not just, we obviously want rest, but being aware of this and being very intentional, it's like, it's just a way, it sounds to me like a way of being, Jalene, and making a switch there.
Yes, it absolutely is a switch. Like we said, we used to think, oh, I can sleep later in life when I'm retired or whatever. But you're absolutely right. What you're doing now is going to impact not only those later years in quality of cognition and longevity, but it's also affecting your day to day. You're less focused, you're less productive, even though you think you may be more productive.
Mm-hmm.
It, it's the little things like, you didn't get the time right on a meeting, or you missed a meeting that was in your calendar, or you didn't see a phone call, or you didn't see an email. Like, it's those little things where we're not completely focused, and that's because we're not getting great sleep.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to a follow-up question then. We're missing those things, and and maybe we're not paying attention, or we're not totally aware yet, Jalene, but where people are overriding, I would say, signals. So our body is, giving us signals, and why are the higher achievers more likely to override those body signals? Like you said, is it really that drive to achieve and do more?
Yeah, I think it's, we're so consumed with professionalism and being reliable and accountable that, yeah, we will sacrifice those things, and then we don't listen to the cues and the signals that are
Mhm.
in appointments, or yeah, not catching something. There was a study that people who don't get enough sleep miss facial recognition from
Mm,
their people that they're involved with. They did a study, and it was like, I can see your face and I'm responding to how you're responding to me.
yes.
But when I'm tired, I'm not as aware, I'm not as sharp. And so now I might be missing how my spouse is reacting to me, or my children, or my
Mhm.
colleagues. So then that starts to affect your relationships. um and I think we don't, I think it's awareness. I think ultimately the answer to your question is, why do we override them? I think it's awareness. I don't think we even realize that those two things are connected. you
Right.
know we may be like, oh, I didn't sleep great last night, and yeah, I wasn't as sharp today, but over time that does build up. And so I think that drive to produce really deadens the signals and the cues. And so then, yeah, we just ignore them, and we ignore them, and then they become louder, and then they manifest as chronic illnesses and more serious diseases. And then you're really, and that's, I work with a lot of people who either have been diagnosed with a chronic disease or
Mhm.
know someone that have. I'm 56, and so it's,
Mhm.
things are starting, the bells and whistles are starting to go off now,
Yep.
and people are like, oh shoot,
Yep.
now I really got to focus on my health. So yeah, I think that drive to perform overrides any cues, and then the cues will get louder.
Well, and to your point, Julian, what I've seen, or I've experienced, and I've seen others, and I love your take on this, is we're overriding the signals and potentially amplifying it when we start to, because if we're using caffeine, sugar, other foods, right, to kind of help, because now I want to do
Stimulants.
more, and
Mhm.
those are like, can make it even probably even worse, right? Because you're actually adding addition. Now you're not getting into sleep, and you're adding, this other component, which there's a great book I read years ago, about how our brains work, and they did it, and you maybe know more about this than I do, but like sugar and how that makes you do more short term decision making versus long term decision making. So I'm sure when you're sleep deprived, it's going to be harder to think longer term, and like you said, the facial recognition and things like that. So you think you're being productive, but you're not
Right.
actually being as productive as you could be.
Yeah. It's harder to recall. That's why I always
Mm,
tell students, like, you think that cramming that extra hour at night is going to help you do better on the test, but you're not going to be able to recall that information. Short-term memory gets stored into long-term memory. So
mhm.
that's another big thing is, yeah, you're not as quick, you're not as sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I'm hearing you say is that if we can adjust our behaviors, that's going to help create greater success. And I think that leads me to a follow-up point that you and I talked about before we recorded this podcast, which I thought was fascinating, was this idea of immunity to change. So if we know that there's a problem, Jalene, if we can finally start to acknowledge the signals. And I guess I want to encourage people who are listening in. And by the way, if you guys are listening in and want to connect with Jalene, I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. Jalene and I are connected on LinkedIn and such, and she's got some amazing resources for you. But I think number one, we have to be, like you said, self-aware of looking at these signals. And if we can at least get that, and I think part of it is, hey, can you acknowledge that in yourself? And maybe I would just ask you, Jalene, as you're working with students and others, is there, like you said, you talk with this other student working on a project, is there much of a resistance to people acknowledging the signals, or are they quick to acknowledge the signals, but then they just don't know how to adjust from there? What do you see?
Yeah, I think we can all recognize the signals when you start to say, like, attention span, recall, focus, alertness. We all know those things. And then I think, just like you hit the nail, then what do I do? Okay, so
Yeah.
I know this is a problem. Or I'm overwhelmed. I
Yes.
know I should be working out. I know I should be eating healthy. I know I should be getting more sleep. I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get
So
overwhelmed. Yeah.
yeah. Um, but to your point of the immunity to change, and I credit, this is Robert Kegan and Lisa Lahey, Minds at Work, who created this whole, it's an actual process, a coaching process that we use at the studies at Tulane for the behavior change. And I've used it now with my own clients, recognizing, like you said, being humble enough to say, you know what, this isn't working, and I'm going to reach out to help. We hire
Mhm.
tax people to help us with our taxes. We go to the dentist for our teeth. We're not supposed to know it all. And
Yes.
so hiring a coach, or going
Mhm.
to your doctor to say something's not right, but I'm not sure where to start. And recognizing when you are immune to making a change. Say, I was working with a gentleman this morning who really wants to lose weight, and he knows that he should go to the gym. He can't get there. So that immunity to make that change, recognizing, like, it's not for lack of willpower, it's not for lack of desire. There's something else getting in the way. And that's where you and I have talked a little bit about this. There are these subconscious
Mhm.
hidden commitments
Yes,
that
yes.
we have, and these big assumptions that we make. And so recognizing, I have this goal. I have been trying to achieve this goal for months and months and months, and I can't. So having that self-awareness to say that whatever I'm trying isn't working, and maybe I should hire a professional, or talk to my doctor, or talk to someone about why I'm immune to making this change.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. I mean, this is, as you folks are listening, because I know many people, maybe they haven't heard of this or thought of this concept of immunity to change, but I like how you brought up there are hidden commitments. And then you also said big assumptions. So maybe break that down a little bit more for us, Jaylene, about what are those hidden commitments that people they're committed to. They're like, I'm committed to, but they might not even realize how committed they are to it.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll take that example of a gentleman trying to get to the gym to lose weight.
Hmm.
Hidden commitments could be, I am committed to being a professional at work. I'm committed to being viewed as reliable. I'm committed to being a good father. I'm committed to being a good husband. They're almost like our values, right? Like,
Hmm.
these are things that make us feel worth it as a human. And
Yes.
so we call them hidden because you're not even really aware that it's getting in the way. It's in direct
Hmm.
conflict of your goal. If you want to be a professional and be at work, and be reliable and accountable from 9 to 5, it's going to be in conflict if you want to get to the gym during the day. You're going to
Yes.
have to find time in the morning or in the evening. So those two
Yes.
things get in direct conflict, and there's the tension. It's like foot on the gas, foot on the brake. And then the big assumption comes out of that, and it could be something like, I assume if I'm not at my job from 9 to 5, I will be viewed as unprofessional, or I assume that I need to be available whenever my boss needs me,
Mm-hmm.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or I assume that if I take care of myself, I will be viewed as selfish.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's big assumptions like that. And so then what we do, once you kind of get those big assumptions out in the light of day, you can say, is that true all the time? And then
Yeah.
we run tests, and a test might be like talking to your boss. Like, if I'm putting in however many hours and I'm getting the job done, is it possible that on my lunch break I could go to the gym? Or is it possible I could come in at 8:30 so that I can get to the gym, so that I can be more professional, I can be more focused, I can be more productive? Studies show that sitting at your desk for 8 hours straight, your productivity actually
Yeah.
falls. But if you can get up every hour and just clear your brain and walk around and get the lymphatic and the blood flowing, then you sit back down and you're actually sharper and more productive. So, you know, there's a way to start testing some of those big assumptions and then poking holes in them, and then they don't hold their power anymore, and you realize, like, I can take care of myself and not be seen as selfish.
And that's where I think something like you, Jalene, that comes in and working with, if you guys are listening to Jalene, I think somebody that comes in and like picks away, gets at those hidden commitments, gets at those assumptions you may not even realize they're there, like you said, Jalene, and you're so adept at this. And that's why I love having you on the podcast and other guests, is like, oh, I didn't know. And you know how to ask these questions if you breaking it down much more quickly than they would on their own. Because I agree, and I've done this being coached myself, Jalene, and different things, this goal setting in general, like you said.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to say, okay, yeah, you want that goal, but have you thought about the other obstacles along the way? And to your point,
Exactly.
right? What are those obstacles that are likely to encounter at some point, right? Nothing ever goes
Mhm.
exactly to plan. And to your other point of the assumptions, I like to say what you said, there's some kind of story or narrative going on there.
Yeah.
And is that narrative going to get me there or not? Right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that narrative productive or counterproductive? And
Mm-hmm.
for a while, sometimes those narratives keep us safe, or
Yes.
or allow us to excel in our careers, to
Yes.
be, the hyperachiever. And we also get to say, is it still serving me? It
Yes.
served me for a period of time. Is it still serving me? Can I change it? How do I want to change it? They're just beliefs. Beliefs can be changed.
Yeah.
That's, the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up. There's a whole theories that I went through last year called positive intelligence, and this idea of how do we
Yes.
think. Yeah, you're familiar with Shiraz.
Yeah.
But the idea is,
Shazad,
to your
yeah.
point, yeah, exactly. So, but I think that maybe speak to this, Julian, a little bit, because I was talking to a group earlier about this as well, about roles in our life and situations, and that those change. And I think that, like you said, there's a safety there that people want to hold on to, even if it's not healthy or good for us, but it's known. And so, can you talk a little bit about that? And this kind of goes to identity, if you will, but like, here's how this is how I was, and now they know me this way, and I'm shedding that skin, and I'm letting that go, and I'm stepping into something new and different, and I might not get it right, and so there's a lot of fear and trepidation there. And can you speak a little bit about where you've seen success of people, moving from what I call the gap to the gain, if you will, and how you've been able to get people to bridge that gap of like leaving behind what was. And they believe you. Even they think, I've heard you. I recognize the hidden commitments. I read the sun, but I'm still scared. There's still some fear in making that change.
Yeah, in the process of the immunity to change process, we call those tests. We start testing that big assumption, and we do it with something that's safe and comfortable
Hmm.
and easy. For the gentleman, again, the example, like I said, it might be going to the boss and speaking about, what's the company culture. Is there,
Hmm.
especially if there's a gym in the company, like, then you kind of know that they encourage health and wellness, that
Yep.
culture is there. So, or is it, I'm gonna, move my schedule so that I'm gonna work 8:30 to 6 tonight or something, and I'm gonna go to the gym in the morning, and I'm gonna see how my productivity is that day. So we
Hmm.
start testing it, because you are absolutely right. Our subconscious wants to keep us safe.
Hmm.
That's the whole point of our nervous system. And when we start to change things, the bells and whistles go off, like, oh my gosh, change, 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 fear, 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 because everything just wants us to stay safe. And comfort is in what we know. There's not
Hmm.
comfort in what we don't know. And so it takes a little bit of courage. And that's where, like, you've seen the benefit of a coach,
Yeah.
of motivating, encouraging, supporting, and then holding accountable.
Right.
Um, so it's baby steps. I don't like to do massive overhauls, because then it's like a shock to the system and it's gonna, abort.
Yeah, no, it's to that point, as you said that, Jalene, what made me come to mind is I've seen people that are hoarders, they've got just a ton of stuff in their house. It's just packed. And they go in and they clean it out, they fix it all, like one intense thing. But what happens 6 months or a year later? It's back to what it was.
We put a Band-Aid on the problem. We haven't solved the underlying problem that got
Mhm.
us there in the first place. That's
Right.
what we have to address.
Right, and that takes time to unpack, to get through.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
there's resistance, you know, and you've got other things out there too. So I know if you're working with an organization, I liked how you said if they're out of a gym, they're wellness. But we're living in a culture now where it says, well, we want everybody back in the office 9 to 5, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
this
Not a
because
fan,
there's
but
fear. There's like, oh, I don't trust my people, or
right.
underlying right assumptions that hey, they're not going to get their job done, and
Yep.
so that is not being healthy as an organization. Now, some places you need certain people, but I'm trying to say, like you said, why don't we? I like how you said this, testing some things, and we're not saying we're going to stick with it forever, but we're going to test it to see if it doesn't work or not. Right? I really like that
Right.
concept, Jalene, that you're bringing in there.
Yeah, with any change, whenever I'm working with someone, and even myself included, I
Mhm.
try to come at it from a detective. We're going to do some research here. We're going to make some tests. We're going to see how we feel. And we're also going to know it's going to be trial and error. You're not going to nail it. Like, if I want to work out 3 times a week and I go do it next week, okay, that's great. But is it sustainable? Can I keep this going? So, having some just the grace in the process to say we might nail it this week, we might not this week. I kind of like to go by like the 80-20 rule. If I'm nailing it 80% of the time, I feel like that's a win.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going for perfection and progress. And um, I also like thinking about fail as an acronym. It's a
Mm,
first attempt in learning.
mhm.
There's really, failures are any great success story, they'll tell you there was a failure along the way.
Yes.
And it
Yeah.
either made them pivot or learn or adapt or change. So I've really tried to, in my life, embrace it's not really a failure, it's just a learning. And we're going
Yes.
to move on from it.
Yeah, you just wanna fail fast, right?
Yeah,
Do it as quickly as
exactly.
you can, and then you can move. In fact, as you said that, Jaylene, the other thing I remember was something around Steve Jobs, who used to run Apple. He would say to his team, "I expect failure because if you're not failing, you're not innovating, you're not trying new things. If there's no failure, we're doing something wrong."
Yeah, we're not pushing, we're not trying
Yeah.
hard enough. Yeah, like it's like in sports, right? Like you're going to fall down. If you're not
Mhm.
falling, I'm a skier. If you're not falling down when you're skiing, you're probably on the green slopes. It's too easy.
Yeah, yeah, right? And so I think creating a space where, like you said, dealing coming in and you can create a space where we're not taking undue risks. We're taking small steps so that way we can get back up. And I think that's where a coach also helps you. It's like, okay, don't because what happens, I think sometimes people go big and they try, like we said earlier, and it doesn't work, and they're like, well, that didn't work, and I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
that maybe the
Or
resistance
like,
you need to go higher now, you know?
right. And I think that gap that you talked about with like for the hoarder example
Mhm.
is real. There's a worthiness gap, or it's
Mhm.
why lottery winners within a couple
Yes.
of years, the studies show they're broke again because their subconscious hasn't adjusted to what the new normal is. It was so used to living this way, and then there's a new way and it's fearful and it's like, well, no, we're not going to do that. So that's why I'm a big fan of I always say small steps still climb mountains. You don't
Yeah,
need these
absolutely.
giant steps.
Yeah, and I'm in 100% agree with you, Jillian. What I think is getting people to, like you said, to take that step. And sometimes it's just like get the step, get the momentum going,
Yes.
right? And
Yep.
then okay, and like I said, you will trip up, you will make mistakes, but we're having a coach like yourself, somebody coming alongside you to kind of keep it going, and don't just
Yeah.
just fall to the wayside. I think that having that somebody that's there, encouraging, holding space for you to be accountable. Really, it's to yourself at the end of the day. But I want people that are listening in, is whether you're the business owner or the leaders, like if you don't have somebody like that in your world that you can be accountable to, and we're talking about health and well-being here, you're not at a loss. I remember at 40, Jaylene, going to the gym. I hadn't done the gym really ever. And I said, I don't want to go hurt myself. So I
Yeah.
hired a coach and I said, help me know how to do these things until I can do them consistently. And then when I got that doing and I want to go to the next level, I'll go somebody else. But we always need to be looking at somebody, what I say, ahead of us that has been doing this work, and you've been doing this work for a long time. And so you can go through it much quicker with somebody like yourself coming alongside, right? And just getting some of the things that are hanging us up out of the way more quickly.
And see the pitfalls that others have hit that, you don't need to hit. Like, let's, what are some things that are going to get in the way? So we can get you
Exactly.
to success much quicker.
Right. So then you're now, what I hear you saying is we go through this process of paying attention, we're listening, we then can make that move of not getting hung up in immunity. It's more of like, okay, working with you, Jalene, or getting clear on, hey, my hidden commitments, my these bigger assumptions, I can now address them like, hey, no, wait, those aren't serving me any longer. And we start leading ourselves in a better, healthier way, and like you said, becoming, I like how you said the lottery example, like now actually we feel it's going to flip it if we understand we're worthy of this and we're a steward of this, like, oh, I'm taking care of my body, not for the benefit of me, but also for my spouse or my children or my coworkers. And so now you're changing your story and your identity in a positive way. And maybe if you can just share an example or two of folks that you've worked with where you've gotten them finally on the other side, Jalene, and it's new. They're no longer that person they were when they came to meet with you. And talk a little bit more about what have you seen in them as far as how they're showing up differently?
Yeah, there is, worthiness is it comes back to a lot of that. Am I
Mm.
worthy to take care of myself? Am I
Mhm.
worthy to pursue my dreams? And so, um, as you were saying all that, what came to mind is I know it's cliche, but the oxygen mask
Mhm.
is so real. And I use this a lot with my clients. And if they have a small child or grandchild, I'll say, you're on a plane, you're in an emergency situation, the masks drop down. Your instinct is to take care of this child or this grandchild that's with you, right? That's a
Mhm.
parental instinct, or a
Right.
loved one who's with you. Now, is that 4-year-old able to put the oxygen mask back on you?
Mhm.
They can't. Then what happens to you? Well, then I become unconscious, and then I die. And who's going to take care of the 4-year-old then?
Mhm.
And so it's a real importance for leaders to remember they have to take care of themselves in order to take care of their teams.
Yeah.
When they're not, filling their own cup, they're going to be more irritable. They're not going to manage as well. The relationship thing that we talked about. And so looking at it, whether it's sleep, going to the gym, eating healthy, taking care of yourself puts you in a position to then take care of others, and
Mhm.
to then be. And so what I've seen with my clients is once they kind of get over that hump, they get away from the guilt or the shame or the worthiness, and they start taking care of themselves and they start feeling better. They want everyone else around them to feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
just breeds. And then they're like,
Mhm.
you got to take time out for you. And I want you to, and I value you to. And I know you're going to bring back more to the team when you do. And then that employee says, I feel valued. I feel important. I feel like
Mhm.
my health matters. I'm not just a cog in this wheel. I am a contributor and I'm a part of this team, and my health matters too, to the whole team, right? Like a
Yep.
soccer team, if the goalie's sick, we're in trouble. So the
Yep.
whole team matters. So it becomes infectious. So that's, start at the top, take care of yourself, and then you can take care of your team. And then your team wants to take care of themselves. And then
Yes.
you become a really strong organization.
Yeah, I call that a self-managing team, Jalene, when we understand that and we look after each other, and that's where Steward Your Business is all about. Like I said, I love working with business owners and team leaders that have that mentality. Sometimes they're just like, I don't know how to develop, I don't have the bandwidth or what the case may be when I come in, but they recognize I want to be a good steward of what has been entrusted me because they're leading for me. And that was my own personal journey, Jalene, of I learned I better be taking good care of myself so I can be there, like you said, the oxygen mask. But if I'm not doing it, they're definitely not going to be following along because they will not be loyal and engaged as they would when they know somebody's truly looking after them and coming from a servant's heart of like coming from an abundance place, like you're saying, Jaylee. Like
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
myself taken care of. I want to help take care of you. And I think that is so powerful, and it really does, like you said, affects the entire organization.
Yeah. I think all of our audience can relate to, you're interviewing for a new job and they're saying the corporate culture is like, X, Y, and Z, and we have all these benefits and this and that. I'm always a fan of look to the leadership. What are they
Mhm.
doing? Because if they're not walking the talk,
Yep.
it's not really company culture. And guess what? It's not going to be encouraged. If your
Yep.
leaders aren't going to the gym and taking care of themselves, they're not going to want employees. It's not going to be valued in the same way. And then your employees are like, well, this doesn't match. You're saying one thing and doing another, and I don't want to be a part of that kind of culture.
Yep.
And I think that when you can have that culture of valuing employees' health and wellness, they're going to stick around. You're going to have
Mhm.
retention, and
Yes.
they're going to
Yeah.
bring people on board. They're going to say, hey, this is a great company, come work for this company.
Exactly. If you can do that and be organic, you definitely have a competitive advantage in the marketplace where people want to come. And yeah, I think, you're a great leader in this example too of Jalene, how you work with folks. You're not just you're coaching them, you're guiding them, you're not like fixing them per se.
No.
And sometimes I think we're trying to like, if you're a leader and you think, oh, I'm just going to fix them, that's the wrong approach. And I appreciate how you come in and say, like, we're not about fixing, we're about coaching and helping people, you know, create this space.
Yeah, because what is that saying? Give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach
Mhm.
a man to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, you can't just fix someone. You have to help. You have to empower them and
Yes.
give them the tools and enable them to work on themselves. And it's going to be more sustainable. If I tell you to go do something and you don't want to do it,
Right.
I got to figure out why you want to go do it. And that's motivational interviewing is such a great coaching technique for that.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, and then you're creating sustainable change, like you said, with the fish analogy. And I think discipline is always a good thing, but we want to do it in the case of alignment, of like,
Yeah.
okay, here's where all we're going. So then I want to discipline myself because of the alignment, not just for the sake of discipline. And I think you brought up this as you're listening, as you guys are listening in here, see how you're approaching it. How are you guiding and coaching? Because everybody is a coach at some level. Maybe you don't realize it, but you are.
Mhm.
If you're in some kind of leadership position, are you drawing the best out of those people that you have the opportunity to? Or are you just trying to like, oh, this is just the way, you just got to fall in line, and you're not going to get it, like you said earlier too, you're not going to get that. There's going to be resistance, there's going to be immunity to that, you know so I
And eventually resentment and yeah,
exactly.
mutiny.
Right, so which we don't want. And so the whole part of this podcast, and I know we're getting to the end of the podcast here, but it's been fantastic, Jalene. You're bringing up so many great things to think about, is that ultimately we want you as a business owner or a leader to be healthy, because if you're healthy and you're going to be able to, like you said, it's infectious, it's going to help the rest of your organization. And so, Jalene, I want to ask you this question as we're getting to the end of the podcast. Like, what is one thing, or if I missed something today when we were covering things, that a leader, and whether you think you're a leader or not, you're in a position of influence and watching over people, what can they start paying attention to today? What's that simple first step that they can take so they can get healthier?
Yeah. Two things come to mind. The first one is thinking of what really shifted for me. I had a mentor coach who said, it's not really, for some people, discipline works. That word works. But for
Yeah.
me, discipline is like, I think about the military, you've been disciplined.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, the word that I love is devotion, being
Mm,
devoted to yourself and your
I like
own
it.
health. And devotion for me, has more of a spiritual,
Mhm.
just more of a joyful way of looking at myself and my
Yep.
health. So that was a big shift for me when I started to say, I'm devoted to my health. And there are certain habits and behaviors I'm devoted to. And so one thing that someone could start with is time on phone. How much is your phone in your hand? And so,
Mhm.
sleep was our overall theme. If you're scrolling your phone at night before you're going to bed, that's one thing you could do tonight is put it down, put a timer on your phone, put a reminder on your phone. A lot of the smartphones now can send you a reminder, it's time to wind down. When we get ready for sleep, we really do. It's like landing a plane. You can't just jump into
Mm-hmm.
bed and expect to be
Mm-hmm.
tired. So think about putting your phone down 30 minutes before you know you're going to be turning out the lights. Science has shown that blue light is very similar to the rays of the sun. So that's activating your brain because we run on a circadian rhythm. We're supposed to be awake during daylight. So if you can put that phone down, it starts to cue your brain. Nighttime is coming, sleep is going to be coming. It might make that transition into falling asleep a little easier and a little quicker. So that's my big tip, is put that phone down 30 minutes before you want to turn out the light.
Yeah, and you did a great job in your TEDx talk. Again, I'm going to put a link to it where you walk through even more in that,
Mhm.
and I think it's great. So you guys can go check it out. It's on YouTube. Fantastic. Jalene, this has been a really powerful conversation, and it really stands out to me that the biggest constraints aren't often, we think they're external, but really they're internal, and it's that energy, it's that awareness, it's those patterns, and they're not going to fix themselves. And so if you're like feeling stuck, we brought Jalene on the podcast so that you now know one more person that could be in your court to help you along this journey. So that way, if you're not operating in full capacity or just pushing through exhaustion, there is a different way. And Jalene is there to help you along those ways. And so we're grateful for you coming on the podcast with us today, Jalene.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to your audience about health and wellness.
Absolutely. Well, if you guys found value in the conversation today, of course, we appreciate you liking and subscribing and following along. Go ahead and leave some comment or two for Jalene. We'll make sure it gets to her. And we want to empower you to continue to lead with clarity, sustainability, looking after your team. We want you to come back week after week, share this with your friends and colleagues. And we just thank you for being here with us. We wish you well. And until next time, be well, everybody. Thank you so much for listening.